Hi, I'm Caroline Warnes. I'm the Managing Director and Chief Content Officer at Only Good Content. I'm about to join the Online Prosperity Show to talk about why good content matters and how you can start doing better content for your business.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place to discover the tools, tactics, and stories that actually help you build a business that you love and a life you're proud of. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be diving into something that's literally keeping a lot of business owners up at night. And that thing is how to create content that actually connects, especially this digital age where we've got AI and everybody can literally create content. So if you've ever stared maybe at a blinking cursor, I don't know if that happens these days, with the tools that we have, but if you've ever, wondered how to actually make your words matter or how to actually connect with your audience, then I encourage you to really pay attention to this particular episode, because our guest today is none other than Caroline Warnes, the Managing Director and Chief Content Officer at Only Good Content. Now, Caroline, how are you doing today?
I'm really good. Thanks, Prosper. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I'm literally shaking in my boots right now because I've seen you create really awesome content. And that's the reason why we're here today. And I'm hoping we're going to be creating only good content from this particular episode today.
That's my bar of entry. It has to be good content or it's out the window.
Absolutely. And or you're already standing by the window, so hopefully you're not going to be throwing the computer and everything else out.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, for those that are tuning in, Caroline is, as we said, the CCO of Only Good Content, a Sydney-based agency that's helping businesses say better things more clearly. Now, she's worked with everyone from ASX-listed companies to global tech leaders. And what she's been doing is blending strategy with storytelling that actually moves people and a market. And here's a fun fact. While she was actually raising her family and running a business and creating good content, she also wrote a book that's called the 6-Week AI Content Sprint, which is fast becoming the go-to for marketers looking to balance speed and strategy. So I encourage you to grab a notebook or at least your attention span. As we all know, a lot of people's attention spans only last 3 seconds, because this episode is literally going to change how you think about content forever. And hey, if you're only just tuning in for the very first time, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening from, so you never miss any story that would actually unlock your next biggest breakthrough. Now, Caroline, I could go on and create stuff that, maybe people are not going to listen to, or start saying things I'm not even qualified to talk about. You've had a really rich career, right? You started off in journalism, corporate comms, and now you're into entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about, this journey, and maybe getting us to the part where you then realize, I could actually start doing things in my own terms.
Yeah, like you said, it's been a rich and a long journey now. I won't tell you exactly how many years, but it started off in journalism, like back when, printed publications was still a thing, when people went out and bought the newspaper and the magazines every morning. So I worked across magazines and newspapers, and then, like you said, went through to corporate comms and marketing with different types of companies, so tech firms and professional services firms as well. So did a little bit of time in law and also a bit of time in government. And sort of when I was wrapping up my last in-house role, it was during the big C, COVID, and did 2 lockdowns as the head of comms and media at a government agency in Canberra. And I think, I had a young family, as you mentioned at the time. My child was about to start preschool, and I sort of realised I needed more flexibility in my life. And, the only way I could see to make that happen was either you go part-time, and that can often limit your progression in terms of where you go and limits your opportunities, or you have to take a risk and do it for yourself. So I chose the latter path. I decided I was going to take the risk and back myself and jump off the deep end and see if I could get something happening for myself. And I'd identified that there was a really big gap in the market at the time. This is back in, 2020, 2021. It was really hard for people to find good writers. So not just people who could put words on a page, but with B2B, you also have to be able to, tell a strategic story and, talk to different personas that the marketing team and the organisation wants to talk to. So I knew very clearly that was a gap in the market at the time. So I decided to start Only Good Content and chase that opportunity and see what happens. And here we are nearly 5 years later, and I'm still doing it.
And congratulations. I mean, obviously, there's so much to unpack from that. But what I really, really am interested in is, what was a typical sort of day in your journalism days? Because these days, you just sit in front of a computer, the information is there, and you just hit press, and then whoever your audience will then end up reading or consuming that content. But with journalism, there was obviously a back and forth with the editors, and then the actual printing, and then you wait for sales, and then all of that stuff. Just tell us what that looked like for you.
That's it. It was like you kind of just described it. So I did monthly magazine journalism. I also did weekly community newspaper journalism, and that was it. You lived by the cycle, the monthly or the weekly cycle. You had deadlines, and if you were writing a story, you would write your story. You would make phone calls. If you had to go out and see someone, you'd go and see someone. You got schmoozed a lot by people who wanted you to write nice things about them. So I used to get lots of invites to events and all that sort of thing. And then you would get to the end of the cycle, you would see your content published, and then read the stats and go back and do it all again. So it was, it's actually quite similar to the way a lot of businesses run their sort of marketing cycles now, but probably maybe with a little bit more discipline and, around the deadlines, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And for you guys, literally copy and paste was literally cutting a photo and putting it onto something, right? It was.
We did have computers. We did have the computers. I actually used to write for, it was the precursor to Google in Australia. So it was a magazine called NetGuide. And so we used to tell people which websites to go and visit in the early days. And it was amazingly popular at the time, but these days Google does that job for us. So it's not around anymore. But yeah, it was a great way to start my career. It gave me a lot of discipline and respect for deadlines and, how to write about technology and all those sorts of really important things that matter now.
Absolutely. See, what I like about that depth is your work literally had to have an ROI. You know what I mean? Like whatever you put out there, because there's the limit in the space where you could put a piece of content on a magazine. So you wanted to make sure it's the right information with the right tool. And it also is, aligning with the rest of the tabloid. Now, as compared to these days, do you reckon the guys that are doing content today have got it easy, or do you think it's still sort of the same because now we don't have a limit in space? I mean, we can create as many things as possible, and imagination is the limit.
I think that's a really interesting question. I wouldn't actually say that they've got it easier. It's just different. Like, I don't like comparing apples and oranges either, which is really what this is, I think. So you're right. Like, we had like numbers that we had to meet and targets. You got audited for your readership, and if that number was dropping, you got your ass kicked. I got yelled at by Kerry Packer once, who was like a famous magnate who's not with us any longer. But there were all sorts of repercussions if you weren't able to meet your numbers. But I'm the kind of business I run these days. I'm not out just necessarily chasing big numbers with the type of content I do. It's a little bit more targeted than that. And I actually don't envy people who have to do that sort of thing, because it's really hard to find something that is going to, go viral or get 300,000 likes, or, because people's attention is so fragmented that, it's hard to get them to focus on anything for longer than a few seconds these days. You don't get them for a whole article like we used to when we were writing, magazine pieces. So I don't envy people who have to go after those big numbers on, TikTok and Instagram and all that. I think it's a pretty hard job.
Did you ever get maybe spotted or noticed while you're out grabbing a coffee and they're like, that's Caroline? Or...
I don't think so. No, I used to do a radio spot on ABC Radio, but I don't think anyone recognised my voice. They wouldn't have gone, oh, that's that girl who talks about websites on ABC Radio. It wasn't like, it wasn't like the editor of Dolly or something, which was a famous magazine way back in the day. But it was a great way to make connections. And I still run into a lot of people from tech media who are now doing similar things to me, the early days of tech media. So it's a great way to start a career in content. It's the ultimate grounding in content, I guess.
Absolutely. Now, you did mention you were running comms at one of the hardest times, in the history of, anyone that's probably listening to this right now, because 2020, 2021, if you had to deliver a message to people, it had to be timely, people had to understand it, and it had to literally make sense to them, because everybody was confused and didn't know what the next logical thing would have been. What were those days like for you?
Well, it was really like the way I remember it was like I had a 3-year-old when COVID hit, and then, I was in a workforce that was being really heavily disrupted by COVID, because it was in the government space, but also the aviation industry as well. So we had all those travel restrictions. There was not a lot of information happening in the early days. So I remember the 6 months just literally being running on adrenaline, just going, we have got to just get through this. And then everyone, I don't know if you recall, but everyone at the time was talking about this new normal that we were going to settle into. And then we kind of did settle into the new normal, which was like, we would do our social distancing, and, I was going through certain comms processes at work in terms of like managing all the disruption that was happening. And then 2021 hit, and suddenly this was in Canberra, we're in lockdown number 2, and somehow that one was even worse, because I think we all thought we were through it, and here it was back again. So that was really the moment when I kind of just went, this is a tough life if you are doing this all the time. Like, I'd been doing that role for 3 years at the time, and at this point it didn't look like the disruption was ending anytime soon. So I thought, is there something else I can do that requires less mental and emotional stress, because you're managing so much change, but still, intellectually rewarding. And also you obviously have to think about something being financially sustainable as well. So, in a way, COVID was that impetus for me to think about that and to make some moves that were, in retrospect, pretty bold. And I kind of looked back and said, I can't believe with a young child, decided I was just going to, leave a steady job and start my own thing. But I was incredibly fortunate that it worked out.
Because I was literally thinking about that. You had a teenager in tow, everybody was busy coughing into their elbows, and there you were, you decided, I'm going to build something on my own terms. Like, the nerve.
It was crazy. I don't know if I do it these days, to be honest. Like, 5 years later, I think that was just insane. Like, I really probably should have thought twice about that. And I don't know, often when you're saying, I'm going to go out and do my own thing, you get a lot of cheerleaders around you, people going, yeah, that's great, you can do it. And not many people will give you the reality check you need. But here we are. So I don't know, I guess I've got to be thankful that it just all came together.
Good idea. All right. So, obviously there's always that transition. All right. And you'd understand this. You were working in aviation, and you did say, was it the Air Force or Defense or?
It's government agency,
government agency.
Yeah.
I usually call, people that haven't started a business a civilian, and maybe you would understand this. What was your first day sort of like, or maybe not necessarily that particular day, but now that this is now everything is all on you. You don't have to have people, cleaning your desk while you're at home. You had to
Yeah.
take care of that. What were the first sort of days of Only Good Content in 2021?
Well, to be honest, I did a really silly thing when I started it. Like I finished my job, I think, on Wednesday. So I finished up on Wednesday, and then I decided I was just going to start my own thing the next day. Like I probably should have taken like a week off or something and just gone out and walked around in the Arboretum in Canberra, or sort of, touched grass or whatever it is that we say these days. But
Yeah.
I had this real drive to just like get into it and don't waste any time, get things happening. And so I remember just thinking I had to bring structure to it immediately. So it was like, I have to just write plans and have a very tactical step by step of what I'm going to do in the first week, the first month, the first 6 weeks. So I knew week by week what it is I had to focus on. And, I'm sometimes not someone who's that great with structure. Like sometimes I sort of freelance a bit and just like, do what feels right at the time. But in this case, it was the absolute right thing to do. Like you got to have, your day by day plan for what you're going to do to make things happen. And it has to be, you've got to spend some light time on the strategy of what you want to do. Like, what am I trying to achieve here? What are my goals for the first, for the first year or whatever? But then you have to get really, really tactical with it. You have to say, okay, now is the time to build my website. Now is the time to identify who I'm going to reach out to. Now is the time to build my LinkedIn presence, that sort of thing. So if you don't have that structure and bring it quite quickly, I think things will fall apart sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. You see, during COVID, I'm in Melbourne, right? And we
You copped
invented.
it. Yeah.
we could write the book around that.
Yeah.
My dining room table became a restaurant. It became a library. It became a school, and it became a laundromat, and also it actually became a boardroom because everything was happening there. What was that like for you in your household, especially with the teenager? She would have been there would have been good.
It sounds familiar. There was a lot of mess. So I think I was like working at the dining room table because I can't remember why. I did have a spare room, but for some reason the spare room was being used for something else. So it was really chaotic. It was, I had someone living in with me at the time to help with my son because he was, needed care while I was working. So it was, I don't know, I remember there being a lot of papers everywhere because I used to like writing things down so I don't forget them. I think the word to describe it is just chaos, and you've got to be able to live with a bit of that chaos for a little while before, if you're not comfortable with a bit of chaos, doing your own thing is probably not for you.
Absolutely. Now, you did mention there was a gap in the market that you sought out to fill, and that obviously B2B sort of content needed strategy and a story, not just fluffy words and stuff like that. First of all, what was that gap, and what made you believe you were the right person to fill that at that particular time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way I kind of always talk about it is B2B content, it's kind of part science and part art. So you're not writing fiction and you're not writing journalism. If you wanted to, obviously you have to be factual, but it's not just about facts. So when you're doing B2B marketing content, you're trying to get someone to do, think, or feel something, or ultimately buy something, like eventually is what you want them to do. Facts are part of that, but they're not the full story. So you've got to be able to trigger an emotional response in them too, and lead them to something and take them on a bit of a journey, whether that's in, it often can't be done in a single piece, but it has to be like, we'd call it a nurture journey or a campaign journey, whatever it happens to be, or even a lifetime journey with a customer. So back in 2021, there was no ChatGPT, and a lot of people struggled with this. So it was really, a lot of the time it was about finding good writers, like writers who were able to be strategic as well as, make the words sound good. So that was quite an easy way in for me. So having come from journalism, I knew I could write, I knew I understood the business landscape, and I knew that I could bring those two together. So, I spent time just mapping out what that value proposition looked like and identifying the companies that would need me. So, that's sort of what we'd call the middle of the funnel, between when the customer first learns about you and when they make their buying decision. So it's quite a long time between those two endpoints. And I deliberately reached out to those companies where I knew that they might have a need for it. And it turns out like, something like 3 out of every 10 that I reached out to was interested in having a conversation with me. And some of those people I still work with today as well. So, having the understanding of what it is you can do, but also who specifically you can do it for, it's really important, rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to be a marketing consultant, or I'm going to be a communications consultant, or I'm going to be a whatever consultant. You've got to frame it in terms of what it is, the problem that you're going to solve, and for who it's for. And then you go straight to them and say, I can solve this problem for you, if that makes sense.
That's really nice. And I like the words that you've used there: do, think, and feel. I actually respectfully don't like magazines for one thing. Have you ever been in like a 7-Eleven and you're just really busy minding your business? Maybe you're grabbing a coffee or a drink, and then you just look to the left, and then there's a tabloid with a topic or a hook that just say they did it. And now my whole day is fixated on what do they do? Who are they? And what happened? And things like that.
It's the original clickbait. That's the original clickbait. Yeah. I remember like the amount of time you spend on covers in the magazine industry for what it is. It was like the whole focus of the month, shuffling words around and finding the right picture. And it looks like it should be simple, but it's not. It's a really, really, really hard thing to get right. And then you would compare all the covers that did well and, which ones didn't, and find what they had in common. It was probably more time goes into the cover than the rest of the magazine. This was obviously a long time ago. I don't know if it's still the case, but yeah, today with content, it's the same thing. It's the first 3 seconds, the first 3 seconds gets someone in and decides whether they want to go deeper. So I guess in that sense, we haven't changed too much.
Oh, absolutely. And there's also something about helping other people tell their story. While obviously as a business, you maybe neglect your own storyline and everything else, but you're also really good at the hooks. Like, the reason we're having this conversation is from your actual content. This is not something that I got a recommendation or you decided. No, I saw your content, I got hooked, I responded, which is very difficult for me to do on a lot of pieces of content. So this is a genuine compliment on really good content that you're putting out there. And I think it's a pattern break. Now, have you been sort of receiving any such response or feedback from people, or are you just really showing people how to do what really good content should look like?
I think I'm not actually a good self-promoter. So have never been a good self-promoter. I'm quite a private person. And I think, the first couple of years in my business, I did zero self-promotion. Like, I would just be like, my work speaks for itself. I can reach out to people directly. They will refer me. And that does work for a while. But then, we've hit an era where it's really hard to grow and to move forward unless you can put yourself forward and show why you're different. And I also suspect that has something to do with the proliferation of AI content as well. Like, we're getting so used to seeing machine generated content that I think people want to see more humans and just, know that they're talking directly to a human, and that it's not something that is just being cranked out by ChatGPT or, Jasper or whatever model is the flavor of the month. So, the last year or so, a few months in particular, I've been pushing myself to do a little bit more and to share some of the knowledge that I've gathered as well. I'm always shocked to learn I'm not new at running a business anymore. It still feels like I'm new, but I'm actually not. So I've got a bit of, accumulated wisdom to share. So, trying different formats like video, which is, the LinkedIn algorithm loves video, which I'm learning at the moment. It's very hard to get traction just with a text only post. So I think sometimes you've got to be brave and say, I'm going to turn my camera on and I'm going to talk to people directly. I'm going to be uncomfortable for a little while, but it does get attention. So you obviously reach out to me, and I've had some great conversations with clients around what I'm doing as well. And I've written a book as well, which is something I've always been talking about doing and never actually done. So all these little bits and pieces make a bigger picture of who you are and what you do and why you bring expertise that other people may not. So that's, I guess, what I'm trying to accomplish with that at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. You did say you were threatening people with, putting out a book, and people should actually
No,
take the threat seriously now, right?
it's not as hostile as it sounds. It's because I was always very into reading and writing ever since I was a little kid. I was always thinking I would write a novel or, some sort of book that was like really important in the literature literature universe or whatever. And
Yeah.
so this isn't that. This is a book that's written in support of my professional life. But it's still something I'm glad I did, because I was so intent on doing a book for so long. And it wasn't until this year that I just said, I've got all this knowledge and all this, accumulated content that I can translate into something that, I can share with other people. And wrote it, got it out on Amazon, and was actually quite surprised this week to see it in the top 25 list for marketing books globally on Kindle, which shocked me because I didn't actually think anyone was going to read it. So that was a really nice surprise, I have to say.
Oh, absolutely. And congratulations on all of that. We'll jump into
Thank you.
that book a little bit later on. So, I mean, obviously, we sort of figured out, what the start looked like and where you at right now. But, all of this requires a bit of learning and a little bit of guidance and, just really looking at what other people are sort of doing and then figuring out your way. As you say, you used to refer to yourself as a noob. Now you are at least no longer a statistic, because not a lot of businesses go past the 3-year mark. And congratulations on that sort of front. Are there any sort of places where you would maybe go to look at what they're doing, learn, or just get inspired as you were, on your way up?
Yeah, so I discovered there's a guy who lives in America. His name's Ed Gandia. So he's like a writer's writer almost. So he started out as a freelance writer and built like a 6-figure business. And now he focuses more on training other people to build 6-figure businesses. So I found his book, which is called The Wealthy Freelancer, like read it cover to cover, used that to inform what I was planning to do. Followed his blog, read everything he was writing. I think we even had a couple of conversations back and forth on email in the early days as well. And I still follow him on LinkedIn because he's a great source of information. So I found that really inspiring. Like, you've got to find someone who can show you that what you want to do is possible. And, what I wanted to do was build a business that was going to be comparable in terms of lifestyle to what I had when I was working for someone else, but also had a bit of creative freedom as well. So, he was really inspiring to me. And I don't know. And then I had people on the other end of the spectrum, like my accountant at the time. He told me, he was the only one who actually said to me, there's going to be some tough times ahead, Caroline. Like, it's really hard to work for yourself. And that was a bit of a reality check at the time, because I'd got it in my head that this was just going to be amazing and I was going to, kick all these goals. But he sort of brought me back to earth a little bit and, prepared me that there was, those early days of starting your own business, they're not easy, as you probably know. You've got to be prepared for some bumps and some knockbacks and some rejections. And but you've also got to give yourself some runway to try. And, if it fails, what's your plan B?
Oh, absolutely. And what people don't quite realize is it's in those bumps and bruises that actually define your character. And those are the things that, if you really put together, they actually then create and formulate the origin story. But a lot of people try to avoid those bumps because, we have to only be putting out only good content out there. Everybody has to be seen as,
Yeah.
as it's all, sunshine and rainbows, but it's not always like that. But you've gone past all of that. You know what I mean? You've actually really worked with some heavy hitters. You've listed ASX listed companies and, and some global sort of tech brands. Now, for some of us that are also trying to be on the way up and grow and things of that nature, what do these clients get wrong about content before they actually start working with you?
So that's look, it's a really good question. So I can sort of answer the main one that I see, setting a foundation for content that isn't that strong is when you haven't done any work around sort of understanding who you're trying to target and what they're interested in and what they care about. So often when we're thinking about marketing, it's like, I've got a story to tell. I need to tell my story and I need to tell everyone how great I am. For the most part, yes, you might be great, but most people don't care about that. They care about other things. They care about problems that they've got at work or, at home if you're selling to consumers. And what you need to do is, say, I'm specifically want to talk to, this person at this company in a general sense, like what we call persona marketing. And this is what they care about and this is what they want to hear. And you've got to discover like a really nice intersection between what you want to tell them and what they want to hear. So that's the sweet spot, really. And then if you can add in a third element, which is like something that no one else is talking about, that's when you hit like a really magic button that can get major traction. So that's what we'd call like thought leadership, where you're leading the market talking about something. And that's a rare thing to do as well. But yeah, essentially the main thing that I see going wrong is like not understanding who you're trying to talk to, what they care about, and being too focused on you and how great you are. You've got to give a little to get a little back.
Oh, absolutely. And everybody else is tuned into, what do they call it? What's in it for me? Radio. W-I-I. With them.
The with them factor. Yeah.
And it's all about them and, what actually makes them tick. All right. So obviously, now that you've launched your agency and you've figured out who you're working with and how you're sort of helping them, not only did you create your business during COVID, but you are like a sandwich business. Okay. So what I call a sandwich business is you're running away from, that particular thing that was happening at that particular time, but you went straight into the fire as AI just literally was waiting to gobble up any person that decided to escape, so and AI has completely obliterated any remnants of the copy or the writing industry, especially for those that just were doing copy for copy's sake. But you've literally
100%.
You've literally written a book on it, and you've aptly named it the 6-week AI content sprint. First of all, how do you see AI helping or hurting the creative process?
So I think it's, I like any writer, I think most writers were a bit cautious of AI in those early days. Like it was like, what is this? And you'd see some of the outputs and you think this is just not up to standard. And often as a writer, you have a more critical eye than other people do. But I definitely had that impression in the early days. And then, I started using it myself, and it's actually not something to be scared of as a writer. I think it supports the creative process rather than harming it. I think, if you want to be in the area that I'm in, which is, producing content for other people, if all you're doing is just giving them words, then you haven't probably clearly articulated the value that you bring. So anyone can get those words. It's what you sort of, do with them, how you structure them, how you put them together into a story. And I would never suggest just getting words straight out of ChatGPT and putting them up on your website or whatever. It always needs attention. It needs to be checked. It needs to be, just scanned to make sure it does sound human, because AI has definite tells that most people can read it and go, and this is not just the EM dash that everyone sort of associates with AI. There are other phrasing and patterns that sort of give away AI copy. I use it a lot for sort of projects and structure and supporting workflows, that sort of thing. So for me, it's definitely an enabler rather than something that's, hindering my business, I think. So I think if you can, be smart about how you use it and don't be scared of it. Like, you've got to get in there and see what it can do. It can actually open doors for you rather than being a limiter. That's my take on it. I'm definitely not an AI denier. I think you can use it for good. You can use it for evil. How you do it is up to you.
I like that. You see, it's like, using a motor vehicle, a car, you know what I mean?
Right. It's a tool.
Yeah, it is a tool. You can decide to walk the distance or you could drive the distance. It's just pretty much how you then utilize it. It's not like when you show up at a coffee house, people are going to be like, did you walk here or did you drive here? And you know what I mean?
It's the output that matters, whether you've got the coffee in your hand at the end of it, 100%. Very Melbourne reference. I love it.
I'm in Melbourne, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Can't have Melbourne without a discussion about coffee. But yeah, there's no shame in using the tools available to do your job better. Like, actually, that should be rewarded and praised. You know, if you can use AI to do something better, you absolutely should. But if you're using it to be lazy and to produce slop, then I think the market will sort that out pretty quickly. So, you know, you still got to apply your judgment and creativity to it.
You see, you're no longer a statistic, all right? Like we've already elaborated, not a lot of people go past the 3-year mark, but there's people that are probably still getting started and they didn't have the exposure that you've had of obviously being yelled at by Kerry Parker and actually doing the right thing about content, because we did mention that back in the time, people actually used to pay money to read certain things and you had to make sure that that is repeated month after month, month after month. And as you have already said, you're no longer the new one figuring it out, all right? Now, what do you sort of find yourself telling maybe new business owners or other, up and coming freelancers that maybe come to you for advice or are probably looking up to you as a source of, reference point?
I think, I think I touched on this earlier, but like you've got to understand the problem that you're trying to solve and be as specific as possible about it. Like, I knew that the problem I could solve was I could get in there for middle of the funnel, like in that really complex, long time when people are making a decision, but you've got to hold their hand through that journey and produce the kind of complex content that you need in certain types of businesses. It's not for every business. It's, where there's like a large enterprise purchase or some technology that needs to be explained, that sort of thing. So that was the value proposition that I had. I never went out and said, I'm a marketing consultant, I'm a communications consultant, pay me X amount per hour to do marketing jobs, because then, you're just waiting for them to tell you what they need. If you can go to them and tell them what they need and that you've got the solution for it, you're halfway there. So, find that sweet spot, that intersection between what you're good at and what is really needed in the market. Find out who needs it, and talk to them directly. Like, that's the way you get started. It will start small, and then it will start, if it's genuinely a gap in the market, it should start to snowball over time. Like, that was my experience. And I mean, it makes sense that that's how it should work. If there's demand for something, you're good at it, you'll get referred, and you can, start to build your presence with testimonials and case studies and all the rest of it.
Oh, absolutely. And congratulations. I mean, obviously, you've figured this out, and hence we're having this conversation today, because some people are just starting and they're just a voice in the wild. They never really scratched the surface, but you've matched and even exceeded your corporate income while you're even working, I think, a whole lot less, because when we reached out, you were like, I'm on my long weekend, and I was like, oh, she's got
yeah. I mean, that's a gratifying moment. Like, obviously the biggest fear when you're going out on your own is the financial risk. Will I be able to meet what I was making before? And when I did that, I was surprised. Like, I just assumed that when you did work by yourself, you had to take a pay cut. And for a while that was true. But eventually, if you're smart about how you do it, you can meet it. And that is, a gratifying moment, because you think, oh my gosh, I don't have to sacrifice here. I can literally, not have it all, but I can have more than what I used to have. And that was, I'm not saying that happens quickly or it happens for everyone, but, it is possible. Of course, there's always less security when you're working for yourself. People, might have the perception of less security, but, the solution to that is you diversify your client base. So, you have more clients on smaller amounts of income. So if you lose one, or if there's someone who is, needs to pause for a while or whatever, it doesn't affect you that much. So, that's a good way to approach it. Don't go for big chunks of work with one or two clients. If you can, get some smaller clients in the mix to balance things out.
See, when we started, you were telling us about, this Caroline that was in and around the concrete jungle of Canberra, but now
Mm.
you're in the sunny Sunshine Coast,
No,
and
I'm in Sydney now, so I've moved
oh,
around a
yeah.
little bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when I was in Canberra when I started the business, and then after COVID, I was like, because I grew up on the northern beaches of Sydney, I was like, I need to feel the sand and be on a beach for like forever after this, because it was, a very long grey shutdown, lockdown in Canberra. So I kind of realised, my work's remote. I can be where I want to be. I moved the family up to the Sunshine Coast just for a post-COVID break, and we ended up spending 2 years up there. It was, really, really beautiful and kind of what I needed at the time, just to have no pressure and to sit on a beach. And I still worked and built my business at the time, but it felt like I was in holiday mode half the time. And then I guess I felt like I'd recovered about a year ago, so I moved back to Sydney to start the next growth phase for Only Good Content. And it's been a fantastic journey. So I've been really lucky that I can move around and see so much of Australia, and I think I'm in the right place now to take the next steps for what we need to do.
Absolutely. And I was actually, physically going around Australia with you while you were mentioning all these
I lived
spaces.
in Melbourne for a while too, by the way. So I've lived all up the East Coast. Yeah.
I don't blame you for having left. I mean, right now, I can't even figure out what what's
I love Melbourne. No, I was there for 5 years. I love it. It's a fantastic city. Yeah.
Good idea. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I loved how you were reminiscing about what you've done and what you've created for yourself and things of that nature. But if you could maybe take yourself back to the time when you were a journalist and you did mention you were yelled at by Kerry Parker and you were just sort of starting out, would you have thought that your life would have been like this at any moment?
I don't think I was even going to survive that meeting with Kerry Packer, to be honest. He was a very intimidating man. So, yeah, it was, that was the kind of meeting. I was very young at the time, like probably I was editing in magazines. I was an editor, but a very young editor and very inexperienced. And I remember just walking out and trembling and going, I am so bad at my job. And as it turns out, I wasn't that bad. I wasn't bad at my job. It was just, dealing with big personalities. Sometimes you have to have a thick skin or know when to walk away from the big personality. So, yeah, look, it's been, it doesn't all happen at once. You've got to go on a bit of a pathway to get to where you are. And I look back over, nearly 25 years now and just think I've been really fortunate to have the experiences that I've had over so many different places as well. And, that is something that I'm really thankful for.
Absolutely. You see, with what you're saying right now, it actually just really boils down to one thing, whatever it is that you're going through in life right now, just pay attention, because one day you're going to have a good story to tell, not only on the Online Prosperity Show, but actually when you put it out there in your own content, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's all the little experiences that make up the bigger picture. So the more experience you have, the better stories you have to tell. That's it.
Absolutely. It was Steve Jobs that mentioned that you cannot connect the dots looking forward, but you can only connect them looking backwards. So maybe we can just
100%.
connect the dots now for that person who's, listening right now. And this is the final question, Caroline. So if anyone is listening right now, they're probably burnt out, really trying to impress the algorithm. They don't own their media. They don't own their content, and all that content just disappears in the void. First of all, where do you encourage them to start, and maybe when can they consider having Only Good Content as their partner in that journey?
I think the best place to start with building your own content, I think you're right. Like, you've got to have your own presence first. So always start with your own website, make sure. And I'm guilty in the past of not having my website up to date. So sometimes we neglect it, but it's one thing that you can't lose is your, whether you've got a blog or wherever you're posting your content, and have your social channels as well. But social channels the algorithm can change at the drop of a hat. It disappears, the content disappears really quickly. I always use it for sort of amplification more than it being your home. So yeah, look, just the best thing you can sort of do is start with your digital home, which is your website, and, build from there.
Oh, absolutely. And if somebody maybe is keen to continue this conversation, and maybe connect with you a little bit more, or actually just see what only good content looks like, where can they go on the internet for that?
Check out my website, it's onlygoodcontent.com, or otherwise I'm on LinkedIn. If you search me up on LinkedIn, I post quite regularly on LinkedIn. And yeah, always happy to connect with people and have conversations. Shoot me an email through the website, and happy to just chat. But honestly, I love learning about what people are doing, and, you know, get in touch if you'd like to find out more.
Absolutely. Now, Caroline, I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent with me on the call today. I mean, your life story and your life experience is nothing short of only good content. So I can't wait to see what people are going to do with this information today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been lovely talking to you.
Good idea. Now, what an incredible conversation with Caroline there. First of all, she's a storyteller, strategist, and also proof that clarity is just still the most powerful form of influence. And obviously, if you're on your way to creating for and relating to your audience, I can only suppose that this is the kind of information that you would want to make sure that you have in your corner, and make sure that it's only good content. So if this episode got you thinking differently about how you can actually use content, I also encourage you to grab Caroline's book, The 6-Week AI Content Sprint. It's on Amazon, and you can also check out her work on onlygoodcontent.com. And I want you to also remember that transformation doesn't just happen from listening alone. I want you to take one insight from today, apply it this week, and see how the message actually lands, and come back again and take another concept and go from there. So join us next time on the Online Prosperity Show, where we're also going to be exploring ideas that could actually help you live a happier and more prosperous existence. Until next time, bye for now.